What's up guys, Melvin here from headphone.ph. Today's video is about this little gem right here, the Simgot EW200 Dynamic Driver IEM. Simgot is an audio company out of China and they make quite a bit of IEMs. I personally have never heard of them before, but I'm also a bit out of touch when it comes to IEMs in general, as I stopped collecting them many years ago. Despite that, I am fully aware of how the IEMs from China has grown leaps and bounds over the past couple of years, not just in terms of having some of the best bang for buck offerings, but as a whole. Before I begin, quick disclaimer that this gem right here was sent to me by Simgot for the purposes of this review, but my evaluation is not influenced by them in any way, shape, or form. They're seeing this review around the same time you're seeing them as well. Now that it's out of the way, let's get right into it. The EW retails for $40 and can be bought from various online stores. One particular store that you'll find when you Google this model is Linso, which is one of their official distributors. Just saying in case you end up buying this and you wonder if that store page is legit or not. It is in the cheaper end of Simgot's IEM offerings, but it doesn't stop them from calling it flagship level in some of their online materials. The EW200 is available in a single color, which is silver, and it's pretty simplistic, but I thought it looked pretty great. Packaging was fairly simple and not much to write home about, but it's also practical. Inside, you get the earphone itself, a few extra tips, and a small pouch. I was looking at Simgot's website and they say the name Simgot means simple and elegant. Having spent more than 3 weeks with the EW200, I can say that's pretty accurate. My first reaction upon picking this earphone is how premium it feels. It's an all-metal body with a very good quality cable. The cable itself is a 2-pin connector that is common nowadays for detachable IEMs. What I like about the body is it's not too big nor heavy, not sticking out once I'm wearing them or not dragging down my ears because of their weight. The only con about the housing is it seems to be a scratch magnet, which unfortunately is quite normal for the material. Aesthetically though, I like its simplicity. I know other IEMs tend to go with a flashier design in their housing, but I kind of prefer this more muted look. The tips are your standard silicone based, not premium by any means, but also nothing wrong with it. Unlike other IEMs, there are only 3 pairs that came with it, but thankfully my first selection was already a success as it fit my ears perfectly. With that being said, the EW200 is a very comfortable earphone. Usually earphones like this tend to either stick out too much or not have enough seal due to shallow insertion, none of which was my experience, thankfully. I was initially worried because of the small number of tips that came with it, unlike some other competing IEMs, but the very first one I tried already gave me a perfect seal and a very good comfort. Isolation was quite good, that I used it as my go-to for my recent flight, and it did attenuate a very good noise level. Not as good as noise cancelers in terms of attenuating super low frequencies, but it's better in terms of mid and higher frequencies. I did mention about this in the introduction, but thought I'd repeat. I don't collect earphones as much as I do headphones. Personally, I have an Etymotic Ear 4 SR, some KZ earphones that I tried, a Meze Rai Solo that was a review unit, and a Pixel Buds for practical purposes. Of course, I've owned and tried a bunch more in the past, but that's the lineup that I have so far. You can take that as a disclaimer or however you like to. Now moving on to the sound. As a budget IEM, I have my usual expectations for the performance, but I also knew Chi-Fi is something that keeps on improving. So I put on the EW200 and plugged it into my G14 laptop, and my first reaction was it sounded okay. The first thing that came to mind was it's a very balanced sounding earphone. Usually with budget IEMs, my experience is they tend to sound colored right from the get-go. Whether it's too much bass bleeding to the mids, or being way too bright, they mostly had their oddity in terms of their tuning. That wasn't the case for the EW200. The tonal profile as a whole was cohesive and there's nothing standing out as too intrusive, which I thought was amazing, especially for the price. What started off as a, it's okay, not bad reaction gradually turned into, this seems pretty good the more I use the earphone. Of course, it doesn't mean it's perfect or something that sounds like a $1,000 IEM. I'd say the bass is not the punchiest or tightest, it's more on the bouncy and softer side despite a decent extension and a mild boost. The treble, while to my ears and preference is not bright, it's a bit elevated around the mid-treble part, which can emphasize instruments around that area a little bit. But I am nitpicking here because as a whole they don't really stand out. I only can spot them because I have to find a flaw so hard for this otherwise surprisingly good gem. The mid-range is my favorite part of the EW200, where it's smooth with just a tiny hint of forwardness. It gives that added body and richness to vocals but doesn't overdo it to the point that it becomes honky or nasal up above the upper mids. The best I can generalize the overall mid-range character is it's warm and pleasant. It blends as a whole to the rest of the sonic character of this earphone. Like most IEMs I've heard, its soundstage is just okay. I wouldn't call it wide because I think IEMs in general are limited in terms of how wide their soundstage can be relative to full-size headphones. But at the same time, I felt it was not too in your head like the KZ earphones or the Etymotic ER4 variants. In terms of overall snappiness and detail retrieval, the EW200 doesn't strike me as an IEM that performs way above its price, but it's also not bad here either. It doesn't match the technical performance of the more expensive ER4SR or ER4XR, and I would say it lags a bit behind the Meze Rai Solo, again a more expensive earphone. But if I'm being honest, the EW200 isn't targeted for people who like to nitpick on those things, so I really wouldn't sweat about the technical performance aspect of it. The EW200 is one of the most efficient earphones I've tried. At 16 ohms and a sensitivity of 126 dB VRMS, you gotta be careful in ensuring you start at low volume before playing your music. On my Asus laptop, a volume level of 20 to 30 was already loud enough for me, but your mileage may vary here. As for sound deviations per source, there's not too much from my experience. Yes, the EW200 sounded better from my LG G8 with its built-in DAC compared to my laptop, but it's negligible. I didn't really play around with EQ as much, but I imagine you can slightly bump up the bass if you find it lacking and also tone down the treble depending on your taste. Just be cautious with the amount that you add though and always see if the sound begins to distort. In conclusion, I'm having a hard time thinking of reasons not to recommend the Simgot EW200. It's one of the well-tuned offerings out there for less than $50, and it's a pleasant listen with its generally relaxed but well-balanced signature. I'm just gonna say this, regardless of who you are, a budding audiophile, an experienced one, doesn't really matter. If you're looking for a $50 earphone that sounds great, comfortable to use, and maybe usable for general purpose stuff, I would give the EW200 a serious look. I think it's a decent offering that most people would enjoy regardless of its price bracket. Doing this review actually makes me curious to hear more IEM offerings from Simgot to see how they stack up against this. And maybe Simgot will send me some of their other IEMs. Stay tuned for that. That's about it for this review of the Simgot EW200. Thumbs up the video if you like it, subscribe for more headphone reviews, and visit headphone.ph for the text version of the review. See you in the next one.